You are not a victim in any circumstance or any situation. I just wanted to say that before I continue on with this video, because this video I'll be talking about crises, so-called crises, such as the housing crisis, specifically the housing crisis. All crises in this world are manufactured crises, are created crises, right? Human beings are creators of their own life, right? Every human being that is born in this life creates their own life, right? Consciously or unconsciously, we're all creators, right? So a crisis is a created situation, right? Now we could go into why we created this crisis, so-called crisis, right? Crisis is it's a pro- it's a product of fear, right? Crisis produces fear, right? When we are in fear, we create crisis. And what is fear? Fear is something imaginative. Is we are creators, like I said, so we create fear. So it's fear's imaginative. So therefore, crisis is imaginative, right? So when we do this, what is the purpose of this, right? Everything has a reason for it, right? It's for us to learn. It's for us to learn through our fears, right? We create things to learn and experience certain things. Everything that we create is for us to experience and learn from it, right? Whether if we keep creating something that we don't want to experience is for us to learn from it so that we can break the loop, break the chains. So let me get into the housing crisis, right? The housing crisis is just a manufactured thing. It's a created fear situation, circumstance, right? It's to make you think that homes and houses are a limited thing, right? It's to make you think that housing is something that human beings lack at this certain moment, right? And it makes you feel like there's not enough homes or houses around for human beings to share, right? So I want you to think about that. Is that something that is true, right? Is this something that is true? One thing I never shared with a lot of people is used I used to be homeless, right? I used to be homeless. I used to live on the street uh for close to a year, and I was pretty happy. I was pretty happy, and I was very content. That's the word, very content, and I felt so much freedom. So felt so much weight. It was felt more weightless, right? I'm not gonna say I didn't have any responsibilities. I had responsibilities. I had to feed myself, find a way to feed myself, find a way to take care of myself, right? So the responsibilities change, right? I'm no longer paying rent. I'm no longer paying uh something towards a property or a building that I'm sleeping, a roof that I'm sleeping under, right? Responsibilities change now. I'm outdoors. I am. I need to find a way to survive in a different environment, right? But what I realize is that it's just a difference in responsibilities, a difference in mentality. I didn't have the stress to worry that I need to pay rent. I need to pay for a property. I need to pay for a mortgage. I didn't have that mentality. right? I didn't have that in the back of my head. I didn't have that burden weighted on me, so-called burden weighted on me, right? Don't get me wrong. While this was happening to me, I felt very fortunate that I was able to live under a roof, right? But now that I'm living under a roof again, I'm I'm asking myself some questions, right? Why do we put a value on homes? Why do we put a value on houses? Right? For so long, I've been depressed, I've been sad, I've been angry. I had so many emotions um, going through me because I always dreamed of owning a home. I always dreamed of living in an apartment, owning my own apartment, owning my own house, owning my own apartment, having a family, whatever the dream is, right? I always dreamed of that when I was younger. But then now that I'm older, housing prices are through the roof. And at this moment, I can't afford to buy a house. I can't afford to buy rent an apartment, right? Because we've been programmed since when we can remember that we need to own something. We need to own a car. We need to own a house. We need to own houses, maybe. We need to own an apartment, right? We need to own a mortgage. We need to have a family. I never fulfilled that dream. Now that I'm older, I'm realizing all those things were just, it didn't mean anything. Especially when I was living on the street, I realized it didn't mean anything. And some of the people that I ran into, even though I was living on the street that own homes and was living in an apartment, they were living miserable lives. I felt like I was more happier than them, right? Not a lot of people knew I was living on the street or homeless because I was taking good care of myself, right? I wasn't, because I was so happy and felt so much freedom. I took care of myself, right? I didn't feel any stress, right? I took better care of myself then than I do now. I'll admit that, because I didn't want to look like I was out on the street. So many people didn't know I was out on the streets, right? Even to this day. But um yeah, I realized even then that a lot of people were unhappy. They had burdens. They felt like it looked like they had burdens, right? They had a burden that they had to fulfill, right? Fast forward to now, and I realize that I am fortunate that I have a roof over my head. I'm fortunate I survived that situation because it was a rough situation, but I didn't feel it that way at that moment, right? I feel fortunate and grateful that I have a bed to sleep on, right? So this video is not to offend anybody, but it's to make you realize it's owning something like such as a house is not the beat. It's not the beginning of everything. Is not the end of everything, right? Owning something such as a house is not. It's not. That's not gonna make or break your life, right? I'm still here, right? Owning. Why should I own a house, right? Just ask yourself these questions. Why should I own a house? Shouldn't everybody be living in a house or a home? I ask myself that question all the time, right? But unfortunately, we have agreed upon a certain system, right? Because it's an agreement. We've all agreed that this system, maybe you'll call it the capitalist system, we put a value on houses, we put a value on homes, we put a value on where we sleep, we put a value on where our families live, right? It's no longer about just living in caves or just how it was maybe thousands of years ago, right? If you can't pay the bills, you're gonna be out on the street. That's the system that we live. That I live. I could say that I live in Canada, where I live, and maybe many other Western nations, societies. It's probably the same. That's the system, right? If you don't like the system, go to some place that has a different system. There are plenty of other places where housing is I'm not gonna say free, but it's cheaper and it's way easier to get a house, right? Right? And maybe you can't. There's no. You don't have the means to move, but this is the reality we live in. We have to accept that it's an agreement, right? You you live in a capitalist system, right? Until then, you can always try to create another system, right? Don't fight the system. Don't hate the game, right? Create another system for yourself, right? You could always create a system for yourself, right? Outside this mainstream system, you don't have to play the game, right? I wasn't playing the game when I was on the street, right? But many people would not want to choose that lifestyle, right? Many people would not choose that lifestyle. Let's be honest here. So don't be a victim, right? And you can survive with that lifestyle, right? I survived that lifestyle. You can survive that lifestyle. Anybody can survive that lifestyle. A lot of people do survive that lifestyle. And I know, and I got to know people that preferred to live that lifestyle. That was outside the system, right? So it's up to you, right? Don't be a victim. Don't complain about the system, right? There are many different systems in the world. You could create your own system, all right? But this is the system that you choose to be a part of, unfortunately, right? You could create this. You could, along with other people, you could create another system. But we put value on homes. We put value on houses in this system, right? And you have to accept it, right? There's no lack of anything. You're never lacking in anything. You are never lacking in anything. Even when I was on the street, try to make sure that has some form of ceiling or roof over my head. I found different ways to survive. I found ways to make my own bed some way, somehow. I found ways to get some food, right? It's up to you. Do you want to play the game or not? But don't be fooled, there's no crisis, right? You're always supported. You're always supported by the universe. You're always supported. It's just people have this fear that if they don't own anything, that somehow they failed, or somehow they would fail. I never felt like I was a failure while I was out in the street. Matter of fact, I was proud of myself. I didn't know I had that in me to be able to do that. So it's all up to you. It starts with you understanding that this universe is filled with abundance. Do not listen to what you're being told that there is not enough of anything. But this video is about houses and homes. Do not be fooled that there is a lack of houses or homes. This is Earth. You could find home anywhere. There's home anywhere for you. And you don't have to pay for it. Earth is free. Earth is free. You could find a way that you could find. All you have to do is find it. All you have to do is find it. So if you want to buy a home, if you want to buy a house, go right ahead. That's an agreement. This life is all about agreements and choosing the experience. Right? If you want to play the game of buying a house, right? Go right ahead. Don't complain about the prices of the homes. Sometimes I find myself complaining about that. But I know deep down inside that I'm fine, right? I know that's what I want, and I know that's what I'm gonna get. But but I accept that it's gonna come in any form, and and I don't put a value on it. Don't put a value on things, because then there's a scarcity, there's a lack to it. There is no crisis. There is no shortage of homes. You could always find a way. You could always find a way. Trust me, you could always find a way. It's just to scare you. Money is not a scary thing. Owning something is not a scary thing. And there's enough to go around. Do not be fooled. Thank you for watching this video.